there'll also be time at the end where you can ask your questions live to Hugh. And that being said, let's kick off. Let's get into it.
Sweet.
How you doing, Hugh?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
You just got back from Costa Rica just like literally a few days ago. How was
Yeah.
it? And yeah,
So good. Yeah. No, I feel like we're kind of adamant now that we need like a decent break in the winter to get away.
yeah,
And so it's been the last couple of years. So yeah, we spent a month down in Costa Rica. It's kind of good to, especially as a creative, to like completely stop and just do like zero work and like you let your brain rest. And so yeah, we spent a month down there surfing and doing very little else. It was heaven.
yeah, great. Whereabouts in Costa Rica were you?
So in the last couple of years, we've done that whole coast, the whole Pacific coast, but we were Dominical, which is kind of halfway down. It's kind of where Costa Rica at the top kind of has an area that's quite flat, and then the lower down you get, it becomes more mountainous. So essentially, the mountains come right down to the ocean, and so it's just you. If you're in the ocean, then there's just this like wall of mountain in front of you, and there's just like so much wildlife. Yeah, loads of parrots, loads of like sloths and monkeys. Yeah, and the whole jungle is just so loud there, and then the ocean is right there. It's beautiful. It's a good spot.
Awesome. What drew you into surfing? Because you went out there specifically to surf, and like tell us a little bit about your passion for surfing.
So actually, you know what's kind of funny about it is I wanted to surf for years and years, and then I think probably it must be like 8 years ago. Tyler Tyndale, was like, we need to surf, like, because at the time in Ontario, a lot of people were surfing on the Great Lakes, and it's like, we should go surfing. And I'm like, it's kind of crazy, but anyway, we both at the same time bought boards and wetsuits. And then I remember the first time we surfed on the lakes, it was like -20, and neither of us really knew what we were doing. We went out with our boards and just like got absolutely hammered for an hour, and we like had like frozen faces, and then I feel like it kind of went on from there. And then of course, funnily enough, Tyler then moved to Nova Scotia as well, around about the same time that I did. So now we're both out here. So we both started surfing at the same time in Ontario, and now we're both out here surfing, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. When you were out in Costa Rica, I know you love personal work and you're always shooting. Did you do any personal work out in Costa Rica, and how was that for you?
Yeah, I shot a bit. I didn't shoot. It's funny, some years like I have the intention of shooting a lot and I don't shoot. And then other years I don't have the intention of shooting at all and I shoot a lot. So it's funny. So this year I have an underwater housing. So I did a project a couple of years ago, which I'm not sure if anyone's seen, but it's basically it's hard to explain. It's basically like water landscapes, but then it's like digital art on top. So essentially, during the pandemic, when I wasn't doing anything, I was just basically messing around with Photoshop, and I created a whole bunch of like weird, like digital art of water, which is as much like, if anyone's interested, there's an Instagram account called Weighted Waves. But anyway, a gallery in Toronto picked it up and started selling the prints. And then it became a much bigger thing than I ever expected it to be. And so this year I kind of thought I'd add to it, but I didn't actually end up shooting that much. I shot like some pictures of friends surfing and like a few like landscapes and stuff. But I think this year, I feel like some years my brain, I really just kind of trust what my brain is kind of doing. And it was just a year to kind of rest. And so, yeah, we just kind of surfed a lot more than I did. Every time I have this kind of debate as I go into the water, whether I'm going to take a surfboard in or a camera in. And this year I feel like it was like 3 times with the camera and like 40 times with the surfboard. So yeah, I shot a bit, but not as much as I normally do.
Fair play. Yeah. What would you say then, over the years of shooting personal work, what are the keys to making time for personal work?
I feel like that's kind of an interesting one, actually, because I feel like quite often I will just take a camera with me. And then sometimes, so for instance, out here, and that was one of the main reasons of moving to Nova Scotia, is I wanted to like reignite kind of my passion for photography. But out here, I find if I take a camera with me, I shoot. And so it's kind of that thing is like, if I put a camera on my back, then I find something to take a photo of. And if I don't, then I don't. So I think the intention is really, if you carry a camera, you're going to take a photo. Because I feel like there's so often when you're out, I'm not sure if you find this as well, where you're out walking around and you see photos that you want to take, but then sometimes when you have a camera, you're just not inspired. So it's kind of like, it's a weird kind of balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you 100%. Find that?
Yeah, definitely. When I have my camera, yeah, things aren't necessarily hitting. And then when you don't have it, you're observation is in a different way, and but it can still kind of take these mental photos as you go along, and then you're ready for the next time that you do have your camera. And one of the books that you recommended to me maybe a couple of years ago was that Larry Fink book on improv. I've got it here actually, and I'll definitely want to
as well.
touch upon it as well. So it was this one. Thank you, Hugh, for recommending me this. And he mentions in that book around sometimes you just take those mental photos and you record them, and then the next time when you're in a similar place, you see them again, and this time you have your camera and you're ready. And so that was like a big takeaway for me, definitely. But for sure, you know, sometimes you have your camera and you just don't see anything, and typically when you don't have it, the world's wide open.
I also find it like one year I actually went away without a camera to try, and because I was like I was shooting a lot at the time, and I was like, I need a break from it. And it was funny because that time I desperately wanted a camera. Like everywhere I saw like photos that I wanted to shoot. And so I feel like sometimes it's good to like totally limit yourself and just be like, you know what, I'm not going to shoot anything. But sometimes like I went for a walk the other day on my camera, and I feel like I took a bunch of pictures of rocks that like I'm never going to do anything with. And they're kind of like, when I look through them, they're like kind of pointless photos, but it's still fun to just like, you know, look at light and practice and shoot something.
100%.
See what happens.
So how do you feel like your personal work impacts your wedding work? I'm going to pull up some photos very soon of some of your work so that we can go into that. But how have you found personal work has impacted your wedding work?
So I feel like this is quite an interesting question. I've done this a couple of ways. Sometimes with my personal work, sometimes with my wedding work, I'll look at it and I'll see flaws in it. I'll see things that I'm not doing that I feel like I should be doing. And so sometimes I'll use personal work almost as training for wedding work. So for instance, a couple of years ago, and I think I've spoken about this before, I wasn't shooting vertical images. And so in my wedding work, when I looked through my galleries, like everything was horizontal. And I was kind of like, I really wanted to be shooting more vertical images, but every time I went to a wedding, I was still just shooting horizontal images. So then in my personal work, I forced myself to only shoot vertical. And so then it was kind of, then my brain kind of reconnected almost. So the next time I was at a wedding, then I found that I was shooting vertical images again. Because I feel like at a wedding, you don't really concentrate on what you're shooting. You just shoot away like crazy and see what happens. Like I kind of just let myself go into a flow state. And so that's one way that has found it's impacted it. But then I think also in personal work, you have that time to be much more like kind of to explore much more. And so then that also impacts wedding work as well. I'm actually with my personal work at the moment, I'm only shooting on manual focus lenses in order to like force myself to slow down. So because I find that that's one of my flaws is that I rush stuff too much, that I'm always like I'm quite high energy at weddings. So by shooting only manual focus lenses, and I've been shooting engagement sessions as well on like strictly manual focus lenses and like parts of weddings, not all the wedding. And it's so interesting how much it changes your composition. Because I find that when I'm shooting, like when I look through a wedding gallery of mine, I can see that I'm like, oh, it's like center point autofocus. Because like like much as you are in the frame now, like all my compositions are like that. And I'm like, I got to switch this up. Whereas with a manual focus lens, you don't compose in the same way because you're not composing with the autofocus and recomposing. You're just kind of like composing and then focusing. And so it's an interesting kind of way of working. And so, I feel like there's so many kind of links backwards and forwards. Between the two.
I love that because I know you've been shooting since like 2012 as a wedding photographer. You've been shooting like even longer than that. When did you start shooting? Like back in England.
I'm trying to do the math. 26 years ago was the first time I had an SLR. So that was when I had a bath when I was younger. I had a darkroom in my parents' bathroom at home. And so I used to develop stuff. So it's a few years.
So what I was going to say is, like I love that even though you've been shooting for 26 years, a wedding photographer for 12 or more, you're still practicing and you're still like sharpening those tools and you're still challenging yourself to like slow down because sounds like you're very aware of, so areas that you want to improve on. And And I love that. That's so cool. So what do you know, not to go on a huge tangent onto like gear, because I know gear is only part of it, but you mentioned manual
Yeah.
focus and what are you shooting with right now? And what's the gear of choice?
Yeah. So it's funny actually, because I feel like I've always been like, every time gear has updated, I've always bought the latest gear,
Oh yeah.
because I've always been like, oh, like every time I've had a cam in the like, well, since 2012 and shooting weddings, I feel like my cameras have always let me down at weddings. Like there's always been points where I've been like kind of frustrated because it hasn't like worked or whatever. But in the last 6 years, as far as weddings are concerned, I haven't, like, I'm still shooting D850s, which I feel like are now quite archaic for a lot of people. But it's the first time that I had a camera that like never seemed to miss focus. It like never, like I feel I had so many cameras that would freeze. You know, you're shooting and then suddenly it freezes.
Yeah.
Whereas it's the only camera for me that has like kind of done that. So I'm still like shooting for mainly for weddings, like D850, 35,
Yeah.
58, and a 24-70, and that's it.
Mm.
So it's my kit is actually quite simple. And then for personal work, I got this like a mirrorless with the manual focus lenses, and then I'm using so I got a whole bunch of like Voigtlander lenses that are based off like older lenses. So they're kind of like a little softer focus. They like have like nice bokeh, and it's just, yeah, it's a fun play thing. But I take that to weddings as well, and I shoot engagement sessions with it, and that kind of, I feel like the Nikon does the like work that I need it to, and then the Leica is kind of the more like creative. So then I
Yeah.
feel like, and also for personal work as well, when I pick it up, I feel more creative because it's a different tool.
Yes.
Whereas I found if I was shooting with my Nikon for personal work, it just felt like work. So I wanted to like differentiate a little and
I
kind of
love
find a
that.
different tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like you mentioned, the flow state and getting into that and then just, being present, but then sometimes like we can just end up shooting a lot. But we have
Yeah.
those workhorses. I also shoot with Nikon D750s. I haven't upgraded them. Well, I've recently bought I bought the Canon R6 because I want to go back to Canon,
Okay.
still have all the lenses
Yeah.
and things like that. But I'm still getting used to it, and I don't trust myself enough yet to be in that flow state when I'm at a wedding with those.
Yeah.
I'm still shooting Nikon, but I love that you have something else with you to unleash that inner creativity and
Yeah, totally.
get into a different
Yeah.
state of mind. So, okay, with that,
I love that you still say Nikon, because I feel like when I was in the UK, I would say Nikon, and then when I came out here, everyone would like kind of tease me for it. So at some point, and I don't know what it was, I switched to like saying Nikon.
yeah,
But yeah, I love that you've kept it.
it's Nikon. I say it's how the
Yeah,
Japanese say it. So, and they created it,
it's
right?
how
So,
it should be pronounced. It's just North America. Yeah,
yeah,
that's funny.
what 100%. So, okay, great. I'm gonna share my screen here real quick, and I would love to just talk about. I've picked around 4 images that
Okay.
that you shared with me out of kind of the portfolio, and so hopefully everyone can see this, and you can see just this image that Hugh's taken. Just give me a little thumbs up if that's clear for you.
I can see it my
Okay,
end,
great.
but
You can see it,
yeah.
Hugh. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So, yeah, share with us a bit around this image and kind of, the mindset or where you were at this time, because it's quite an intimate moment. But yeah, we'd love for you to walk us through this image.
Yeah, so this is actually just an image of a couple of guests at a wedding. It was just during dinner. It's just a candid shot.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's one of the images that is like, I love moments like this. These are the moments that I'm trying to get, and I also love the fact that it's a couple of guests, because I realized that one of the things a couple of years ago I was doing was I was at weddings, and I was shooting like the galleries that I was delivering was kind of were made up of maybe like, out of 800 photos, maybe like 600 of the couple, and then 200 of like maybe other people or candids with other people. And so one of my aims over the last couple of years is to include a lot more guest photos. And so that's something that I have started to do, is to like try and find candids with guests, because I feel like if you have these people at your wedding, they're important. And so there's reason to like have the photos. But yeah, I just love this moment. I think it's such a like tender moment. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it. It's
and it's
funny,
shot
actually,
in portrait.
you know what's funny is it's actually not. It was shot in
Oh,
landscape,
ah,
and it's cropped to portrait.
nice.
And so, but it's funny because in the background of this picture, when it is a horizontal image, there's a couple of people who are like really enjoying their dessert, and I feel like it's just like a funny comparison, but it kind of takes away from this moment, and so I cropped it in post.
Yeah, this image draws you in beautifully. I love the expressions and the intimacy within it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's so gentle, and I feel like and that's the other thing that I feel like I shoot a lot of images that are quite like a lot of laughter or a lot of like very like upbeat imagery, and so I love this because it's so gentle. I'm always trying to also find those like softer moments. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Would you say your personal work is more full of softer moments or quiet moments?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my personal work, is landscapes or almost signs of people being in the landscape, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think, to be honest, I find it very hard to shoot photos of. I find it very hard to approach people in my personal work to shoot photos. At a wedding is and that's one of the reasons I love weddings, is that you just have like free reign to do whatever you want. With personal work, I find it much harder to approach people and be like, hey, can I take a photo? Or even like just take a photo like this of people you don't know. Yeah. Like I'm always like worried of offending people, or so I'm more wary. So yeah, that's again the joy of weddings.
All right, so on to the next one. I'll load that up here real quick. So, all right. Yeah, this is a lot of energy in this one. I love the expression. Yeah, can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, so this is actually this is a wedding photographer, Fern. Her business is Fern Ariel. She's a Toronto photographer. And their family is one of my favorite families. I think now I've shot so Josh, her husband, I've shot his two siblings. So I've shot 3 of the family. Basically, there's 4 siblings, and I've shot 3 of their weddings. Wow. And they're such a fun family. And Josh, I think I met Josh originally on a dance floor like maybe 6 years ago, and he hadn't even proposed to Fern at that point. And he was like, "You're gonna shoot our wedding." And then he went to Fern. He's like, "Hugh's gonna shoot our wedding," and Fern was like, "We're not even engaged." But it's just like, I feel like they originally were meant to be getting married in 2020, and obviously the pandemic did its thing, and they were adamant that their wedding, the main thing they wanted for their wedding was a giant party. And for like years and years, Josh promised me that their wedding was going to be the loudest, like most fun party that I'd ever been to. And I think they ended up postponing it 3 times in the end, but when it got to it, it was the loudest, most fun wedding I've ever been to. And I mean, this is just like an example of that. Like, I feel there's probably like 100 photos like this where it's just like pure chaos, like so much going on. But yeah, I love that Fern is like so like elegantly like basically flung in the air, but she's like maintained that kind of pose. Yeah, it's cool. It's such a fun shot.
Beautiful. All right, so on to the next one. And of course, if anyone here in the live audience has any questions for Hugh based on any of these images that we share, then please feel free to post them in the chat. And if you're not here live, then join us next week too. All right, so onto this image. I absolutely love the edit on this, the crop for sure. Yeah, the light. Can you share a bit around how this image was made?
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of like classically how I work. In the essentially we didn't actually really have a plan for portraits. We just had a location where they were getting married, and we just went for a walk around the block. I feel like I don't really scout locations. I just look for good light on the day. And this was there was just this really cool little like gray narrow tunnel with like the most perfect light coming in. And it was November, so it was cold and it was windy. And yeah, basically we were just, I feel like playing. Like she was like swirling a veil around, like it was just like a fun kind of upbeat moment. And in these moments, I feel like I just shoot like shoot a lot of images, and then it's often in post that you see the ones that kind of really pop. But yeah, if there's good light and like good wind and like someone's like down to like play around a bit, I feel like you always get beautiful images. But yeah, this is actually Frances Beatty shot this wedding with me. And I feel like there's this set of images with hers combined in this kind of moment. There's probably 50 images, and there's so many beautiful images. When I was editing them, it was so hard to pick. And she has a similar angle to this, but like slightly different, of a different version. And yeah, it's a really good set of images. Actually, I really like working alongside Frances, because I feel like we shoot in a similar way, and we almost like push each other to like get better images. Like I feel like she'll direct for a bit, I'll direct for a bit, and it's kind of that fun back and forth. Yeah.
Love that. Elizabeth is asking if this is the same bride that you shot where her veil is flying away above her. Don't know if that.
Oh no, it's not that. Okay. This was actually shot last year, and that image was shot probably 6 years ago.
Wow.
Now. But I feel like this is, if you look through my photos, there's like versions of this image over the last like 10 years. There's so many different versions of that image. Like I feel like it's just an image that I shoot again and again in different scenarios or different ways. I love that light. I love black and white. I love that light. I love veils and movement. Yeah.
So speaking of veils, here's one of my favorite shots for sure out of some of the ones that you sent me. Of course, like a veil was involved. How did this image come together? It's so beautiful. I love the fact that it's it's really about, I feel like their expression underneath the veil that is like caught at the most perfect time. The edit is it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I feel it's exactly the same scenario. It's like it's a black wall, good side light, and it's just playing. Like I feel like I can't remember. I can't remember who it was. I think maybe Cartier-Bresson, who essentially said that you can do everything to try and make a good image, but at the end of the day, it's just luck. Like it really is. Like I feel like so many of my favorite images that I've created have been pure luck. Because I mean, the fact that veil is like, this was just wind. So she threw the veil out and it blew back over their heads. And we just did it a couple of times. They just got in close together, she threw the veil, and so it's pure luck because it frames so perfectly like over the tops of their like eyes, so you can't see the eyes but you can just see the mouths, and then the smiles are so perfect. But yeah, I don't really feel like I can claim that I did anything in particular. I just like shooting a lot of photos in the right moment, then you get lucky. Yeah, totally.
But another photographer may have been trying to get that shot where the veil is going a different way and may not have some photographers look through the back of their camera and then delete them because they're like,
that's true.
They just have like a spare moment and they're like, oh yeah, that didn't work. But then when you see it later and you see a moment like this and you're like, that's actually the shot. And then it comes down to like, training your eye, curating it, and again, like being in the right place at the right time and manifesting that luck as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's important. I feel like so much of photography is finding images in the edit later. Like sometimes images that might be rejected later on when you're looking at them are the images. But yeah, and I feel like I do a lot when I'm shooting. I feel like I'm more in kind of like a flow state where I'm not really thinking about it. And then when I'm editing, I'm more considered. Or culling, I think, is when I'm more considered. Yeah,
totally. Do you feel like when you're at a wedding and you're in that flow state and you're shooting, do you feel like, you know what, that as long as what in front of me feels good, I know I'm getting the images that I want to get?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it's something that I've learned to trust. It's something actually that I've become very aware of. I know, for instance, there has been times in the past or when I started shooting weddings that if I like missed a shot or like I knew there was a shot that I could have got, I would kind of get down on myself. And then I'd be a bit like, I missed that shot. And then I'd be kind of reflecting on that shot that I had missed instead of focusing on what shots were happening at that exact time. So I feel like now I don't even, like I try not to check my camera. I try not to think about what I'm missing because I feel like it's that constant paying attention and staying in that moment that then gets you the shots. Yeah.
100%. Gyson has a question in the chat. What would you say are the key factors for you to get the images that you love the most? Is it, for example, the location? Is it the lighting? Is it the poses? What are the key factors?
It's always lighting. I feel lighting comes first, and then just lighting and creating a relationship with the people you're working with. Like, I feel like those are the two things. Like, I'm always trying to make sure that whoever I'm shooting is like enjoying it, or is like in that moment, or is happy. And then if you put someone in good light, and someone is like enjoying it, then I feel like you get good photos. I try and let people be as much themselves as possible, and just kind of just see what happens. I used to have much more kind of expectations of what I was going to create at a wedding. So I'd almost plan shots and then be like, okay, I want to get this, this, this. And then I'd invariably either not get them, or and then get down about it, or it would distract me from what was actually happening. And so now I feel like I just kind of let what's happening happen. Yeah.
It's almost kind of like the personal work that you shared earlier, and just practicing that, being curious, like taking photos of things that you love, and then when you're at the wedding you can fully be present, and then you just see those images happen. And it's not necessarily about having the right plan and to make something happen, but just being aware, because now you have all these images in your, like, in the bank, essentially.
Totally.
That you can then see and create from. Love that.
Yeah. I think it was Ollie Sansom. It may have been, it may not be, I might be misquoting. But I think he was the one who said, you're not paid to take images, you're paid to pay attention.
Hey,
and I think that that's like, it's such a good one. And it always sticks with me, because that's the thing, is it's, if you're paying attention, if you've got your camera in front of you, then you're gonna get beautiful images. Like, it really doesn't matter.
Wow.
So yeah.
Please, I'm gonna ask Ollie if that's an Ollie Sansom original. That's a great quote.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Anyway.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. So, as I mentioned earlier, you've been shooting weddings since 2012. How do you feel like you've retained your excitement within weddings?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I feel actually this year is, or the last couple of years, I'm at the most excited. I feel like when I started in 2012, I was just nervous like the whole time. Like 2012 to 2014, I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna mess up. Like, and then I feel like most weddings I went to, like, I wouldn't sleep the night before. I was like stress case. And so I feel like those early years I didn't enjoy it. And then like 2015, 2016, I felt like I had to win awards to become well known, to get more work. And so I kind of chased this like I chased that. So I was entering like a lot of competitions, and I won quite a few awards. And then that honestly just stressed me out further, where I was like, okay, so now I have to create work to a certain like standard. And then I have to like have these ideas, and I have to be creative. And so it wasn't until like, I feel it's the last couple of years where now I've kind of like got to the stage where I've like left that behind, and it's just like the only thing that I'm doing is like almost like cherry picking at weddings to like find fun stuff. And so it's now, and also I feel like the move to Nova Scotia has made me, it's almost like I'm starting completely from the bottom. And so again, I feel like I have so little pressure on me that I'm just excited. I'm excited to see what I can get, what I can create. So it's fun. But I think it's important to like understand kind of direction to get that.
So you said you feel like less pressure. Tell me a bit more about that. What do you mean by you feel less pressure out in Nova Scotia versus previous years?
I think it's pressure that I put on myself for sure, but I think it's that I have no desire to win any photo competitions anymore. Like I don't enter them. I don't post to Instagram that often, so I have no real desire to like. I feel like I got so stuck in like I'd post a photo and it would get less likes than the one before, so I'd be like, that photo wasn't as good, and then I'd be like, okay, I got to take better stuff. Whereas I feel like now I just want to take photos for the clients. And I know it's something that I've been trying to do for so many years and never really succeeded, but I feel like finally I'm at a stage where the clients I'm booking are clients that I really want to work with. And I don't know, it's just like, it feels good. It feels like exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So We talked a bit about excitement, you going through those kind of waves. And again, if anyone has any questions for Hugh as we go along, please place them in the chat. Who are some of your photography heroes? Like who have you looked up to perhaps in the wedding industry and then even outside? Because I know you've got quite a few different books there and not necessarily, you know, the photographers out there, but who comes to mind when you think of your photography heroes?
Well, I feel like there's so many. Like, it's such a hard one to pinpoint because I feel like I have like personal work photographers that I love, and then there's wedding photographers that I love, and then there's also like, you know, peers whose work is so good. I feel like in the industry, in our industry at the moment, there's so many people who are like creating beautiful work. Like people like, I feel like Joel and Justina at the moment are just on fire. Like every time they post something, they seem to be like upping that level. It's so beautiful. Sam Hughes' work, I'm sure you follow Sam, his like work at the moment. I feel the thing about Sam's work is that he's so considered, and if you like, with most wedding photos, you like get hit in the face with it and you're like, that's a great image, and then you move on. With Sam's work, there's like so many layers, and I feel like that's such a talented thing to do. Like there's so many multiple stories. Like if you look at one of his images, there's like 3 different things happening, or like 5 different things happening, and they're always like so perfectly like framed as you look around them. Tomas's work at the moment, like it's interesting watching people's work evolve over like a period of time. Like I feel like both Sam and Tomas, they're like, yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, there's so many. Like Leanne Weston's work is beautiful right now. Coco King is like relatively new, and it's just like, it's so edgy and so different from wedding photography. It's so cool to look at. Yeah, I can go on and on. There's like
yeah. And then how about outside of weddings? Like who are some photographers that you feel, you know, definitely check out their books, check out their work?
So I feel like I have so many books on my. It's funny because we just had. Do you know Jacqueline Barber? Oh, she shoots weddings, but she mainly shoots kind of more editorial work. She shoots the most beautiful photos. She's just been house sitting for us when we were away, and all my like photo books have been like, she's been going through them whilst I've been away, so they've all been moved around. And it's funny because when you know when books are in a certain place, you don't really tend to look at them. But when we came back, there was like 3 books on the coffee table that I hadn't looked at for a while, and so it was like fun to see which books she'd been looking at. But Sam Abel is, I feel like that's someone who I'm like looking at a lot because of his compositions, his like photojournalism. Robert, you know Robert Frank.
Yes.
So did you know that he moved to Nova Scotia and later on in life?
Oh no.
Yeah, so he actually, I have this book here. So it's called Good Days Quiet, and he basically produced this book in Nova Scotia. So, which is super interesting because obviously we know him for like the Americans, and we know him for like that very like gritty photojournalism in the like 50s, 60s. But yeah, this is just like a really like quiet, delicate like book about Nova Scotia, which is really cool. It's definitely worth checking out. But yeah, I feel like I'm constantly like always on the like hunt and like always looking for like, yeah, there's so many photographers out there who's so talented. And I feel that's the great thing with wedding photography is you can look at people like Robert Frank and almost like pull those compositions into like wedding work, and yeah, it's such a kind of a different vibe. Yeah, and then we also like you were talking about that Larry Fink book, but if anyone like this series, so Aperture does a series which is basically educational books. It's called the Photography Workshop Series. The Larry Fink one, like everyone who shoots weddings should. I mean, we've spoken about this. I think Jacob Lochman was the one who first like pointed this out to me. But this book, it's called On Composition and Improvisation. This I feel like is a book that everyone should own. It's like, I mean, you agree that this is one of the greatest books. But in this series, like the Mary Ellen Mark, on the portrait and moment, like this is an incredible book. Like just the way she writes about her photography. And I think that's what's so good is like a lot of when you look at a lot of photographers' work, you just see these beautiful images, but they don't really go into them. Whereas with these books, the photographers really break down kind of why they shot images, what they were thinking when they shot them. So it's really useful. And then this book is like, it's such a incredible book. I can't pronounce her name, but we should maybe put a link to it somewhere.
Yeah, definitely in the show
yeah,
notes and on the links below on YouTube. If you're watching this now, it'll be there. I love those books for the reasons that you mentioned, and like really you get into the mindset of these photographers, and they explain their imagery and their way of feeling and seeing the world in such a succinct way. You know, they really have workshopped their words very well, and they just hit. Like every single page has beautiful images and incredible breakdowns of their mindset and the feeling, and you know, wisdom, lessons, tools, loads of great things. Aperture are incredible, and one of the other books in that series is the Alex Webb and Rebecca Norris Webb.
Oh yeah,
book, which is,
I need to get that book. Yeah, because we're both huge fans of them.
Alex
Their
Webb,
work yeah. I love when they post to Instagram that they never say whose photo it is. So you never know whose photo it is. I feel like their work is so similar, it's so hard to tell. It's such like a wonderful kind of collective way of producing work.
They're great. They're a great team.
Yeah, no, I need to get that book. The Sam Abel book is the same. Sam Abel still does workshops as well, and he really breaks down how he shoots, and the way he shoots is incredible. Like his attention to detail and composition is unreal. Let's go
to one of their workshops. Have you been to Sam Abel's workshop?
I haven't, but do you know Heather Doughty, who lives in Peterborough? Because so she did one of his workshops.
Oh, great.
And said it was like phenomenal. So I want to.
Brilliant.
I'd love to do an in-person one.
They're amazing. I was able to go out to New York and do the Alex Webb one with Rebecca, and just showing your personal work and them curating it and just the discussion around it. I love to like geek out over images, and one of the reasons why I love to share images here and we've started to do on Coffee with Creators is just to talk about images. So often we like shoot weddings and then we pick our favorite ones, and maybe one or two of them end up on Instagram, but there's all these beautiful images that may not see the light of day. They don't get to breathe. You don't get to like necessarily enjoy them after, because now you're editing the next wedding and so on and so forth. And so it's, you know, there's loads of great reasons to go, but definitely allow it. Sharing and talking about images is one of my favorite things to do. So let's check out Sam Abel and see if we can.
I'd be down for that.
Great. Okay, awesome. So you've moved to Nova Scotia from Ontario. What was your business mindset when you moved provinces? Because you're English, you moved from England out to Canada into Ontario, and then just a few years ago you moved to Nova Scotia. What was share a little bit around your business strategy when you moved to this new part of Canada.
So to be honest, I feel like there wasn't really a strategy. It was kind of like the whole reason we moved here was completely on a whim. Like during the pandemic at like midnight one night, I was looking at property, and then there was this like cool little cabin on the ocean, and I was like, we should move to Nova Scotia. Well, actually at the time we didn't even think we were going to move to Nova Scotia, but I like basically on a whim put an offer in on this cabin, and then the next thing we knew is like 8 months later we had like fully upped and moved out here. So I feel like there was no real like, I want to set my business up in Nova Scotia instead of Ontario. It was just kind of like, we've kind of done this, so we got to figure it out. So to start off with, I thought I was going to, basically my two thoughts were that I would try and get work in the Maritimes, and if I didn't, then I would continue to shoot destination stuff. And so the first year I shot, I think I did 15 weddings in like 5 weeks in Ontario, which was ridiculous. And then, so I booked that in with knowing that I basically worked out how much money I needed to live out here. And then I was like, okay, so I'll book these weddings in Ontario, and then I'll work on seeing if I can get work out in Nova Scotia and just see what happened. But I found like, as soon as I moved here, like everyone, and it was I had such a great peer group in Ontario, which I had built up over many years. And moving out here, I was like, this is going to be like nerve-wracking because I'm not going to know anyone. And I feel like instantly everyone was like so friendly and so helpful. Like as soon as I moved here, people were like just out of the blue would message me and be like, welcome to Nova Scotia, or welcome to the Maritimes. And it was just like, it was a welcome that I didn't expect, but it was incredible. And so I feel like in the last like year and a bit, I've like so many people have like sent me referrals or like asked me if I needed help with things or like suggested things, which has been, because it's in a way it's a very different market from Ontario. So it's like trying to figure out you know, like price point out here is completely different from Ontario. And even like I feel like I changed my portfolio a little so that it was more kind of like, you know, instead of, a lot of my work was very much downtown Toronto, like it's very like, you know, tall buildings, black and white, etc. Whereas here I feel like the colors are so beautiful and the landscape's so beautiful. So it's then that kind of like shift in portfolio and like also even shift in what people want. I feel then there's many more people here who want candid imagery as opposed to more editorial imagery, which was kind of naturally happening in my work anyway. And so yeah, it was just kind of understanding the market. And then I've never really been that hot on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Like I've never been that good at social media. So it's kind of like, this is like, I knew that I wasn't going to take that route to try and get work. And so then we just did a lot of like back-end SEO work on my website. And so that was kind of what I thought would be like a priority. And Kayla, my partner, does like web design and SEO as well. And so the back end of my website is just like fully geared to Nova Scotia. And it's interesting how much work that got me. Like so many inquiries came in, like you could pinpoint which posts were like sort of sending inquiries. And so even like one blog post, I booked 4 weddings off, which I think is fascinating because I'm not sure if Instagram has that reach. And so I feel like I've always kind of, and I've been teaching in Ontario, most of my work came from referrals. I feel like when you've shot like 250 weddings, most of that work, if you've done a good job, is just like once you start that machine, it just keeps going. And so I've been teaching so long how to like do SEO and like all this, and then to actually have to like start again and do it myself was kind of like funny. But yeah, it's crazy how well it works.
Awesome. So for someone who isn't necessarily on or optimizing their site for SEO, what would you say are like 1 or 2 key tips that you would suggest kicking off with to improve your
like firstly
efforts?
I think it, like for me now, I realize that I think it would be, if I was to say, I think it would be the number one thing. Like SEO would be the number one thing to getting more work. The key is to target, well, what I've found is to target venues that you want to shoot at. And so building pages specifically for certain venues. And then, you know, and it also, I feel like a lot of people, when they blog, they blog a wedding that they shot, they blog a story of it, and they'll be like, Sean and Sam got married at this place, and then they describe what happened on the day. Whereas I feel like blog posts should be like, I only use them for SEO. So they should be so like driven to like certain points. So I don't put that many photos in. I only put photos in that I want to like really stand out. Because I feel if you, and it's a good test to do this, if you go, like if you're thinking of a venue, basically, sorry, I'm like, I got all of this a bit. So basically what I did was I got into the mindset of what I thought someone looking for a wedding photographer would do. And so essentially what I think happens is that when someone plans the wedding, the first thing they do is they think, where do I want to get married? And so they'll go on Google and they'll look at a couple of venues and they'll look at images of the venue to think if they want to get there. So if you see a venue you like and you go and look at images, what you find is that there's a whole sea of images that largely look the same. And I think what's happening is people are they're keywording, you know, the resort or whatever, and then there'll be like 20 pictures of like a table set up or the like outside of the resort, because that's at that point in the blog post they've said, you know, whatever resort. But if you keyword the strong candid images or the strong portraits with the venue, and then you make that all kind of, and you put all of that SEO into the whole blog post, then when someone does a Google image search, then there'll be those images that stand out.
Totally.
And so that was kind of my thing, is it's just thinking when someone's looking for what they're planning for their wedding, like what are they going to do and how can you attract their attention at that point? And I mean, it's the same with Instagram. If you post a picture and you put the venue, then when someone's looking through the venue on Instagram, they're going to find your image. But it was very much that mindset as opposed to like how I used to blog, which was just, straight up like a whole bunch of pictures and a nice story about the day.
Yeah, totally. That shift is key, right? Like quite often as photographers, we want to showcase our work and our beautiful images, and it's like, pick me because of this kind of style. And while that is important, and from a marketing perspective, that those images are great, I would say, like for the portfolio, right? But from a marketing perspective, especially if you're targeting venues, and when I was looking for venues for my own wedding last year, definitely I wanted to see what that venue looked like and how was it shot and what are the options and what did it look like actually around that corner over there, because I kind of want to see images of the venue. And so yeah, so you're totally looking for that. And then if you see beautiful images of a photographer who shot there, then win. It's like a 2-for-1. So it makes complete sense to make blog posts optimized for beautiful images for sure, but also for the mindset of the couple or whoever it is looking at that space.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely.
And I mean, I did one here where it's a brand new venue. The venue hasn't got a website up yet. And so, but if you Google the venue, then there's like the first 20 images are my images. So, and I did basically 2 blog posts, and I'm like, I didn't mean to like spam it so much, but it's just funny because it's like, and then I think I've had like 6 or 7 inquiries for this venue. And unfortunately, I haven't booked one yet because I've been booked on every day, but it's just funny how like effective it was. That's the other thing is finding, and I think with Ontario, there's so much SEO, and that's the advantage of the Maritimes is that there's not as many photographers out here, so it's key because it's easier to actually rank in Google than it is in Ontario. Like Ontario, I'd never make even page 10 of Google, like it just didn't. So yeah, that's been the other thing that's important.
Wow. Okay, so how would you say if you were starting off as a photographer, because you mentioned, you've shot 250 weddings and now the referral engine is working and now you're getting inquiries from that space. You've moved to a new location and SEO, targeting spaces, things like that have been super key. If you're a new photographer and you haven't shot at many spaces and you actually haven't shot that many weddings, what would your keys be for that photographer, like a newer wedding photographer, maybe 1 year into their biz?
So a lot of the venues that I'm doing posts for, I've never shot at because I obviously haven't. Because I'm new to Nova Scotia. So the images that I'm putting up aren't actually of that venue. And this was a trick that I learned from Nautica Photography, because when they were flying over Iceland, they took a picture out of the window of Iceland, and then they created a whole blog post around that one image, which was basically, we want to shoot wedding photos in Iceland. Do you want to take us? And then people saw that because they would Google Iceland wedding photographer, and then they contacted them. So a lot of the venues that I'm posting about, I haven't shot there. So it just like, if it's a oceanfront venue, then I put a whole bunch of pictures that are like couples in front of the ocean. And so you don't necessarily, so in that situation, if you wanted to shoot at a venue and you don't have images that even match, then you could go out and do a styled shoot, and then put up a blog post which is like, I mean, basically my blog post read along the lines of, if you're getting married at this venue, I would really like to shoot there. I think it's a great venue. And then it's just the name again and again and again. And so because now most of my referrals that I'm getting are Ontario weddings. And so I'm just giving those out to Ontario photographers. So it's most of the leads that I'm getting now are like newer leads, and most of those are coming through SEO. And a lot are coming through referrals, because people have been like super generous with referrals out here. Nice. From like other photographers.
And there's probably even photographers that are booked in Nova Scotia that might want to shoot in Ontario, and then you could shoot them an Ontario wedding, and then they're shooting you a Nova Scotia wedding, and like everyone's keeping each other busy, which is a huge part of booking as well, is having a solid network. And I love that you've been accepted and into Nova Scotia. So welcomed rather, so well, which is great. So Tia was asking, your website is Google's #1, which is super impressive. Is your partner for hire? And share a bit about your partner and what she does. That'd be great.
So Kayla does. She is for her. Her website is calmcontent.co, and basically she does SEO. She builds websites. She does branding. yeah, whatever you're looking for. But yeah, she's awesome.
Excellent.
But yeah, she's definitely helped me get right up there, which is awesome.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. So yeah, we're almost at the end of our conversation here. We're gonna have time where we can open up the room and have more questions and some hangs with Hugh. Before we go into that, I have a series of like kind of quick fire questions that I'd love to ask you, Hugh. So what would you say is like one of your favorite books? I know you've shared a few there. Yeah. What comes to mind when you think of your favorite photography book, and maybe a book outside of photography as well?
Oh man, I have so many. I feel like books are like the key to my life. Like if it's fit, like I feel like so many influential books. The book that I love, or which I think is super important to read, and I tell everyone this, is Homegoing. It's a fictional book. It's about intergenerational race, and I feel like that is like a book that is like so important to read. Photo books, oh, I don't know, there's so many. Actually, I don't know if you've seen this book, Days with My Father.
No, I haven't.
Do you know this book? It's beautiful. I think this would be particularly powerful for you. Anyway, but yeah, this is a truly beautiful book, which makes you like really think about life and how important it is.
And then the Larry Fink one you mentioned as well as a photography book too.
Larry Fink. I feel like I have like hundreds of books here that I would mention. There's an amazing surfing book called Barbarian Days, which is like, I think I've read it like 7 times now. But I don't think anyone's as interested in surfing as me, so you're probably not going to want to read
that. You never know. Barbarian
Yeah.
Days, nice. Okay, what's your go-to software as a photographer? What do you use the most? What do you love?
I feel like, I mean, it's Lightroom, probably. It's like, saves my life every day. Like, it's so good. I don't use that much software, apart from Lightroom and Photoshop.
Yeah.
I feel like actually the Light app, do you use that? I can't remember what it's called.
Say that again, sorry.
There's an app called Light Track.
Oh no.
Which basically tells you where the sun's going to be in the horizon. And at what time. I find that super useful if I have to shoot somewhere and I haven't been there, just to know like at what time the light's going to dip and where it's going to dip and stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably the only photo app that I use.
Nice.
I feel like I'm a bit old-fashioned in that sense, that I'm not very good with technology.
All good. I use something called Sunseeker, which I think is the same. It just shows you the trajectory of the sun. Awesome. Is there a favorite movie that you have, or something that like really inspires you?
Yeah, it's funny. My favorite movie has been the same favorite movie for like the last 10 years. It's A Single Man, directed by Tom Ford. The trailer is terrible. If you watch the trailer, don't judge on the trailer. The trailer they weirdly did to like attract like a popular audience, and then it makes no sense for the rest of the film. So like totally ignore the trailer. But it's basically has the most beautiful soundtrack, the most beautiful shots. Like compositionally, it's out of this world, and like the colors, the way it's put together, it's like I think it's the best movie ever made, hands down.
Nice one, Hugh.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then finally, what would you say you're most excited to experience or to create in 2023?
Well, I feel like just like candid photos, like you never know what you're going to take. Like, I feel like that's the joy of weddings, is you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, just the photo that I don't know I'm going to take yet, but I know that I'll love. Yeah. I feel like you do that. You take a photo that you love and then you want the next one. Like, it's always like, it's just like, keep on going. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited this year to like really push my candid work. And as I was saying, like, I feel like Sam Hughes' work has been a huge inspiration to me. There's also there's a couple of photographers out here, Samson Photography, Kelsey and Samson, and they take, when in their package, in their like final gallery that they deliver, they have so many candid guest photos. And there's so many great photos, and I feel like that's something that I'm really pushing this year, is, as I said earlier, is trying to get a lot of really great images of everyone who's at the wedding. So that's kind of that's my challenge that I've set myself. Yeah. Awesome.
Love it. Hugh, thank you so much for being here. We're going to continue with the podcast edition of this, but appreciate the time, and also just huge thanks for supporting and encouraging me throughout my journey as a photographer. I want to take this moment to just say thank you so much, because ever since we met, I guess, in like 2014 or 2015 at
Yeah.
a conference out in Vancouver. You know, we were like sharing photography books, I think, even then, and like our photo heroes, and we've stayed in touch.
Yeah.
And you know, you've been a huge support of ARC and the conference that we've had, and always encouraged me to like really, you know, to yeah, just, you know, keep moving forward, and to even from the education side of things. So I appreciate that. And when I shot you a quick DM when this was just an idea, and I was like, hey, I'm creating this thing, would you be a guest? You were like all in. So yeah, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for always having me. Like, it's such a huge compliment. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks again, Hugh. Take care, and we'll see you next week on Coffee with Creators.
Sweet. Thanks so much. Bye.